Welcome and thank you for joining me here again at Film Pro Productivity. Each week I'll be introducing concepts that film professionals and other creatives can use to make life easier and avoid creative burnout. I'll also present time management and lifestyle hacks for a more focused, effective and happy life. My name is Carter Ferguson and this is episode 12, Time Wasters and How to Avoid Them. On today's show, I will be talking about how to deal with people that waste your time and distract you from what is important. But before I go into that, on last week's episode, I explored the topic of achieving your larger goals by focusing them into 12-week slots using Brian Moran's productivity system, the 12-week year. I asked you to think about how that system could work for you and for you to start making a few decisions about where your own life and work is going. Now, deciding on your larger life goals, especially if it's not something that you've considered before, is something that won't necessarily take you 10 minutes. But if you can start thinking of them and deciding on them, then you can begin to tailor your life and your work to get you closer to them. The famous American motivational speaker Earl Nightingale says simply that people with goals succeed because they know where they're going, unquote. And I've got to back that up. If you want to achieve your goals, you need to start deciding exactly what they are. If you missed the episode, do go back and check it out. And if you have an opinion, as ever, I urge you to get in touch and tell me how you're getting on. And you can do that via the SpeakPipe recorder or by email on filmproproductivity.com's contact page or on Twitter at FilmProProdPod. Today I will be delving into the topic of time management, and time, you must never forget, is one of your most valuable commodities, if not the most valuable of all. You only have a certain amount of it in your life, and it doesn't matter how old you are, you need to take it seriously because you just can't get it back. Would you let someone walk over to you, pick up your wallet or your purse and start removing your hard-earned cash and putting it in their pocket? Of course not. But that is exactly what time wasters are doing with your time, and you need to put a stop to it. It's okay for you to waste your time. That's a different matter for a different episode on procrastination, perhaps. And sometimes you have to slow down and relax, and that's important for your health. But what I'm talking about here is when other people waste your time. That is one of the very biggest obstacles you will find to being productive and efficient. And unless your higher level self recognises it and stops it, it's just going to keep on happening. Remember that your time is for you to spend with your family or on your own business or your own goals, etc. And if you want to waste it, that's absolutely fine. But when other people impact on it and steal it away, it's an entirely different matter as far as I'm concerned. I've wanted to tackle this subject for a while now as it's something that I am more and more aware of. I'll detail here a few of the more common archetypes of time waster, many of whom are not intentionally wasting your time, but if you allow them to do so, they will. It's smart to watch for the warning signs someone is about to waste your time and cut these people off, these time leeches off before they get their teeth into you. So let's start with the seemingly inoffensive small talkers. Some people really want to talk about stuff that just isn't important, and that could be the latest reality TV show or the weather as far as I'm concerned. It's a very human thing, I know, but if you've not got the time to sit and shoot the breeze with someone, then you need to confront these small talkers and get rid of them. I think we've all been guilty of this at some point or another, and I still am on occasion, I have to admit, but these ramblers are the first and perhaps most common form of time waster. I won't generalise, but many a time I have been sitting beside the extras and listened to some of the most inane chat I have ever had the misfortune to hear. Many of these extras are my friends, I have to admit, but some people are just there because they can't get a real job. If you're stuck near them, and I find it really distracting when someone is talking nonsense within my earshot, let alone directly to me, but if you're stuck near them on set, then you can remove yourself from them, and if you have to do some work, you can set up somewhere else and then get into it. If you want to be productive, then you must recognise small talkers, so get on your mission and don't let them distract you. A subdivision of the small talkers are the gossips. Gossips are obviously people who talk about others behind their backs, but in effect they are just small talkers who like to make themselves feel superior by talking others down and spreading negativity. And of course, if they're talking about others, then they will no doubt be talking about you when you're not there. You can just say stop, I don't want to hear it, if you have to. Although I don't say it nearly enough myself. I did put pain to a rumour earlier this year when someone said they'd heard that a filmmaker I know was a con artist. I explained that I knew the guy and that I'd never seen such behaviour in him and that I didn't think that it sounded like him at all. They in turn explained that they didn't actually know the guy they were gossiping about, and so the rumour kind of ended there. I don't think they'll spread that rumour again in a hurry. I try to be supportive in the things that I say, but you have to be careful that you don't become that which you oppose. As George Withers says, little said is soonest mended, unquote. I'll balance that with the famous Oscar Wilde quote. If there is anything more annoying in the world than having people talk about you, it is certainly having no one talk about you. But either way, gossip is just negative small talk, and it will suck up your time if you let it. Yet another subset of the small talker is the wanderer. These are people who are unaware of time and don't know how to manage the clock. They're people without goals, and if you're not careful, they will take up your time and suck you into oblivion. They either can't or don't want to differentiate between what is important and what is unimportant, and will sidetrack you into their own, often trivial chatter. They will also interrupt to tell you just about anything, no matter how trivial, and the best way to deal with them is to avoid them at all costs. Next in line is the interrupter. People who take up your time on the phone or by accosting you in person when you are in the middle of doing something else. Often the best way to deal with a phone call when you're busy is to not pick up. Let them leave a message and listen to it when you have a moment and reply on your terms and on your schedule. If you do pick up, however, or meet them face to face, then you must quickly try to interrupt the interrupter before they take up too much of your time. Don't get into a run of small talk with them. Also, you must train yourself to avoid saying that they can call you later or promise to get back to them, as that just delays the time-wasting exercise. Get right in there, jump ahead and ask them why they're calling or what they want from you. You simply can't allow people to have unlimited access to your time, so ask them what they want, and if they don't know, then reclass them as a wanderer and get rid of them. You don't have time to let them hum and haw until they decide why they want to speak to you. Even if they do know and it's something that interests you, you can ask an interrupter to detail it in an email and you can schedule a more suitable time for the discussion. If it interests you, and only if it does, you can say, I've got a very busy week at the moment and I'm dealing with immediate problems only. Can I get back to you on this? I find that I have to do this all the time at the moment, and it's not my intention to be rude when I do. I just want to give the things that interest me or that are important the proper time, and if I know I can't look at something and give it real mental energy and time until the following week, I will just be straight up and say that. And this goes hand in hand with the doing one thing at a time strategy I talked about in the last episode. On many occasions, the matter raised has turned out to be trivial and certainly not worthy of my stopping what I was currently doing to deal with it. I feel that it's your responsibility to be clear about your intentions and vice versa, and that people appreciate that. By the way, the interrupter can also get you at a distance, and every time they have a question, they'll send you an email or a text. Be careful not to form a habit of responding to everything from these people. That email will distract you from what you're doing just as surely as a phone call, and by the time that you tune back in after answering it to what you're doing, 15 minutes or half an hour will have slipped through your fingers. And with cold callers, just move on as quickly and politely as possible, and if that's not working, hang up. The next one to look out for is the camper. That's what coffee shop employees call customers that buy one drink and nurse it for several hours without buying any more. They take up space in your office or wherever you've set up to work as an uninvited visitor, and they just won't go away. You need to cut these people off or they will trap you. Explain that you're working and politely ask them to get to the point. If you have an office, you don't need to let them in at all. Stand in the doorway and confront them. Ask them what they want without inviting them in. If you do let them in, then you can say goodbye to the next several minutes at least, and they will come back. If you feel you must help them out, and it can often seem that way, especially if the person is a colleague, a friend, or a family member, then you can say, look, I'm busy right now. Let's meet at, say, 1 p.m. for 15 minutes and we can discuss everything then. This stops them getting in and setting up camp and teaches them a new discipline. It also means that you have capped your time with them and it puts you back in control. For me, the most impactful damage to my free time comes from freeloaders, or tire kickers as they're known in the sales world. I've fallen for these idiots time and again. They play on your freelancing necessity to work, or your keenness for involvement in what appears to be a large or interesting or lucrative production, or your passion for what you do, and they often only want to scam you for your advice and your time for free. They often lead with a statement saying that they want to hire you months from now, but need information or advice first. Sometimes they're just whimsically considering making a film or TV show and want to bring you on board, but more often than not, those types just want to make themselves feel important and suck you dry for your creative energy. And in my experience, the shows that they're talking about never happen, as they go from one pro to the next, talking about what they plan to do rather than actually doing it. There's a mid-level tire-kicking so-called producer that lives in Scotland that contacted me and asked me to look at a film he'd shot maybe 10 years before that. He wanted to reuse some of the action footage which involved large-scale battles and, here's where I should have had my alarm bells ringing, repurpose that footage into a new film which he'd get me to write and shoot. Simultaneous to that, he wanted me to work on a new film idea he had based on his half-finished script and take that to a shooting draft. And by the way, this guy's a millionaire, but my experience with working with millionaires like this guy is often that they've achieved that status as they are not willing to put their hand in their pocket for anything. They are absolute skinflints. Anyway, I dodged this guy eventually and drew a line under it, but only after spending just over 10 days working things up with him. I later mentioned the experience to a friend of mine and bam, discovered that he'd also wasted my friend's time too. It's my experience that these types never hire you, and a year later you discover that they've used all of your ideas. As a fight director, I've done several very detailed breakdowns of fights in scripts, only to not get the job at a later date because they never actually had any money. Then when you look into it, their pal has done it. And that's happened more than once, by the way. So if people don't have the funds to hire you right now, and that's sometimes difficult to find out. You need to have a little bit of chat along the way. But if they don't, tell them that you can have a conversation and answer some questions when they are ready. But don't, whatever you do, get suckered into a situation where your precious time is drained by someone promising future business where there isn't any. I know a guy that tried to hire Stephen Fry to do a voiceover. He spoke to him on the phone and Stephen said, "Do you have a budget in place?" And he didn't. He'd approached Stephen so early that he really didn't have much in place at all. And when he said no or not yet or words to that effect, Stephen said, "Well, call me when you do," and he ended the phone call. And that sounds kind of harsh, but Stephen Fry had the right idea. He's a busy guy. We all are. But he simply didn't have the time to waste on a project that was not able to give him that sort of information. He's clearly learned, probably the hard way, not to have his time wasted by Maybe Productions Limited. On another level of this, I quite often get social media messages, emails, even calls from people who want advice, and if I'm free, I will quite often give it, but these requests seldom lead to new business. Don't let the freebie chasers waste your time just because they follow you on Twitter. You have to get wise at spotting the signs. They normally don't reveal how much budget they've got to spend, they normally don't bother with an initial meeting, and they're normally pretty vague. One thing you can do to counter the tire kicker is to prepare a standard email response that asks the important questions. Email them your options. Spend a bit of time on a questionnaire that asks the questions that you know you need to ask, the same ones that come up time and time again. Then you can use that to figure out if a follow-up is worthwhile. A subset of the freeloader is the non-payer. That's someone who has you do work for them and then disappears without paying you. There are one or two people out there that have in effect stolen my time and my work with the agreement to pay and then not paid up in the end. And for these people I reserve a special place in hell. In the UK you can get your union involved, and Equity has helped me out more than once, but sometimes people are just crooks and literally do a runner because they never intended to pay you in the first place. The next time waster I want to talk about, and I've complained about this type of person before, is the meter. That's the person who likes to arrange endless meetings. If you're a freelancer, then meetings have a real impact on your time, but some people seem to do nothing but organise meetings because being in a meeting is a way to feel important. It's also a great way to hide from making and taking responsibility for decisions and to harvest the ideas of others. The greatest organisers of meetings are in public office, and they get paid to attend these meetings. It gets them out of their office and interacting with real humans for a change. They will milk their meetings to death and they will always want another one. So I urge you, before you set up a meeting or accept your next meeting invitation, to stop and ask yourself, do I really need to be in or hold this meeting? Is there a more time-efficient way to handle this? A conference call? An email? Anything but another meeting. And if you do have to attend another meeting, then you must have these 4 things. 1. A clear, achievable objective for the meeting. I hear that Oprah Winfrey does this at the top of every meeting. She states exactly what the purpose of the meeting is. And I think that's a really great habit to get into. The second thing is a written agenda in advance of the meeting. The third is a plan to get what you want out of the meeting. And the fourth is an exit strategy. Or best of all, give the person that's arranging the meeting a pre-agreed end time for it. As a freelancer, you can protect yourself from the meter by stating that they can perhaps have one meeting as part of the deal, but future meetings must be paid for at a pre-agreed rate. The next time waster that you will likely have faced already is the hater or the joy stealer. Haters are trolls and bullies, and they are another long-range time waster, usually raising their ugly heads online. Their only purpose in life is to wind others up, and they don't deserve any of your time whatsoever. If you respond at all to these time wasters, then they've won. I advise you to assume that when you make any comment or post online or raise your head above the parapet in any form of social networking at all, or make any public announcement about your creative endeavours, that somebody somewhere will say something along the lines of it's a pointless exercise and that you have no talent. Then they'll take a pot shot at your looks, at your mental health, and insinuate that you are likely to be a Nazi or something equally horrible. If you know that's going to happen, and it will, you'll be able to laugh at these people and move on. But if you don't, and take it to heart and start interacting with them, then you're going to lose a lot of time brooding about it and ruminating over something you can't control. The penultimate time waster that I face as a film professional is the availability checker, but that one is a little bit easier to get over. These people check me for availability, and I quite often then find myself calling round and clearing the decks of other jobs and pinning them down to make myself available for jobs that, in the end, I don't ever get booked for. There's a production coordinator in Scotland who I will not name that's done this to me like 5 times in a row, so I'm a bit more cautious about the whole thing now. I don't tend to do any work clearing decks now until I have more information on the job. This one can be sorted by asking a couple of simple questions. You can even ask if you are the only person that is getting considered for the job. It's a kind of a problem that comes with freelancer territory. I think my biggest issue with the availability checker is that in my mind I start thinking about the job, and then when I don't get booked I feel that I've missed out. The final time waster I want to talk about is yourself. But I'm not talking about watching TV or lazing in the sun. Mason Cooley says that regret for wasted time is really just more wasted time. There's a great YouTube video on this topic which I'll add to the show notes, but in short it points out that time spent worrying, being angry, or having regrets is just wasted time. So try and let these things go. As I've said before in this podcast, try not to worry too much. Everything is going to be alright. Well, it's been another long episode, but I'd like to sum up by reminding you that working in film and television is a business. Never forget that, and it's crucial that you spend your time wisely, so you make good money, allow yourself downtime, and get the most out of every day. Each of us gets only one life to live. We've got 24 hours in a day and 7 days in a week, and how you spend that time affects every area of your life. Every day that passes is one that you're not going to get back. Waste it or invest it. It's up to you. And if you are giving your time away because you choose to, because you want to volunteer for something, or because you want to help someone out, then please take this advice and schedule your time. Schedule the time you're giving away. It'll pay back, but don't, whatever you do, write anyone a blank check on your time, as that you will live to regret. I hope that this episode has been helpful to you, and that my efforts in identifying the 10 time-wasting archetypes will be of use. All I ask as a call to action is that you don't waste a moment. Your time is evaporating even now, so think of Robin Williams and Dead Poets Society and seize the day. Thanks again for listening. Next episode, I'll be talking about achieving excellence through habit forming. In that episode, you will discover that we are what we repeatedly do. Until then, don't waste a moment. Take control of your destiny, seize the day, and join me next time on Film Pro Productivity. The music that you are listening to right now is Adventures by A Himitsu. You can view the show notes for this episode on the official website at filmproproductivity.com. If you're struggling with something you think I can help with, or would like to tell me how you're getting on, then please get in touch via the contact page on the website. Alternately, you can follow the show on Twitter at FilmProProdPod, and we now have a Facebook page at FilmProProductivity. Please subscribe to the show, and if you're in a caring and sharing mood, then I'd really appreciate it if you'd spread the word and leave an awesome review.